Welcome. Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the November 22nd, 2022 City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. This 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and waste services. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council on regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operational rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint powers agency as the city may be a member of, or which relate to such utility enterprises. At this time, I would like to ask that everyone put their electronic devices on silent. Pam, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Bilski?
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey?
Here.
Commissioner Granger?
Here.
Commissioner Maish?
Here.
Commissioner Webb?
Here.
And Chair Knox, I believe, is absent. Okay.
Would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item number 4 on our agenda tonight is public comments. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. Seeing no public comments, I'd like to move to the next item. It is a request for approval of the October 25th, 2022 meeting minutes. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Our next agenda item is one of our requests and presentation. It is the Environmental Utilities Monthly Update. This report is by Environmental Utilities Assistant Director Sean Bigley, summarizing the monthly status of the environmental utilities activities for information.
Good evening, Chair Webb and members of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm an Assistant Environmental Utilities Director. And tonight I just want to give you a couple quick updates. So first, what I want to do is actually give you a sense of where we're at with respect to the coming year and drought. And so first, just want to note that Reclamation has notified the CVP contractors that they are expecting 2023 to be another drought year. However, the intensity of conditions is to be determined by the precipitation season, which we have just started. So we'll see kind of how that turns out, and that'll obviously, basically tell us kind of where we go and how Reclamation ultimately is going to operate the system, which includes Folsom Reservoir. Just a little perspective in terms of where we're at relative to Folsom Reservoir. So ending this month, November 2022, we're about 90,000 acre feet below where we were the same time last year. So we're currently about 255,000 acre feet. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 26% of total capacity of the reservoirs. The reservoir's just under 1 million acre feet of capacity and about 64% of historical average for the state. So relative to rainfall, October was a pretty dry month in terms of rainfall based on the North Sierra 8 station index. But in terms of November, it's still below the average, but it's definitely close. It's about 4.2 inches. The average is typically about 5.3 inches for the month of November. And so, again, we have many more months ahead for the precipitation season in this regard, so we'll see how that turns out over time. Again, early in terms of snowpack within the system. Right now, the north station basically indicates about 16% normal for this time of year, but again, it's pretty early in the season, and really probably not a good time to derive conclusions in terms of how we're going to be looking by the time we are in 2023. So how does this pertain to preparations for Roseville? So just a few updates. First, we do have 2 aquifer storage and recovery wells in West Roseville that we anticipate to be commissioned and operational before the summer of 2023. These were wells that we had started roughly last year, and we've made really good progress. We just have a couple components that need to be installed into those wells and some finishing work, but we're getting really close. We also have taken advantage of this past year to rehabilitate all of our current ASR wells except one, which we anticipate to be finished during the spring of 2023. And all of our operational staff, as usual, are ready to operate our ASR groundwater wells if needed next year. We'll also continue to coordinate, as usual, with Placer County Water Agency for surface water supply scheduling preparations for 2023, and most specifically after Reclamation makes allocation announcements starting in February 2023. And I say that in the context of each year they make these allocation calls, and during dry and drought years they have the ability to make actual cuts to our allocation. And if we do receive cuts, typically what we do is we'll utilize our Placer County Water Agency and Middle Fork Project water as backup water, basically, to fill that gap. So again, early in the season, we don't know really where Reclamation is going to go specific to that, but we'll find out starting around February of next year. And then in terms of drought stage, right now we're looking to maintain the current stage 2 drought requirements or conservation requirements. And what we anticipate doing based on the results of the precipitation season, as well as any sort of operational need, will adjust as needed, up or down based on conditions. But again, it's pretty early in the season for that. So that is the update on that. And what I wanted to do was to transition to something a little bit more upbeat and positive. So I think in front of you all have a copy of our youth art contest calendar. And so basically what this is a joint department outreach effort. And what it does is it features art from youth from Placer and Sacramento counties. The 2022 Roseville Utilities Art Youth Contest took place during the last month of summer before kids returned to school for the fall. This contest was the third of its kind with a wide variety of submissions ranging from 4 years old to 13 years old. The contest purpose was to engage with the families of Roseville and surrounding communities by motivating young artists to submit artwork representing their view of what our utility services meant to them. It also gave parents a chance to educate their children on how utilities intersect with our daily lives. This year's theme for each piece was "We Are Your Roseville Utility." We received nearly 90 pieces, or 90 submissions. We gave each finalist a recognition certificate, a gift card to an art store, and have their art framed, as well as providing them a copy with the calendar that you have in front of you. So with that, those are the updates I have for environmental utilities, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff at this time?
Over this as well?
That's next.
We have some artists in Roseville, that's pretty apparent. Wow.
Yeah.
These are
Impressive.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Is there anyone from the public who'd like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing any public comment. Thank you so much, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Really good.
Our next item is also from the environmental utilities. This is the capital improvements projects overview. Today's presentation is by Principal Engineer George Hansen and Senior Engineers Tracy Mueller and Janice Gainey. They will be providing an overview of the Environmental Utilities Department's capital improvement projects for our, and as an update. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Chair Webb and Commissioners. My name is George Hansen, Principal Engineer with the EU Department. I'm joined by Tracy Mueller and Janice Gainey, both senior engineers within the division. We principally are responsible for engineering support for the three utilities. So tonight we have a PowerPoint presentation that should be coming up there. It is. And I should mention that there were a couple of modifications were made, so you should have an updated copy of
We
that
do,
updated
yeah.
slide. All right.
Thank you.
So Janice will kick it off. She will cover the first three projects there related to the water utility, and then Tracy will finish it up with the last two projects at the Pleasant Grove plant, the wastewater projects. So with that, I'll turn it over to Janice.
Thank you, George. My name is Janice Gainey. I am a senior engineer with Environmental Utilities in the Tech Services Department. I just wanted to first brief you really quickly on the status of West Side tanks. You know, that project has been in the making for quite some time, and we finally brought the project online in May of this year. We did an expedited construction schedule to get the tanks and the pump station operational so that if we needed it to mitigate supplies during the summer, we would have it. Right now, we're wrapping up the final punch list of the project, and we're going to close it out completely by the end of the month. This is an overview of what the two 6 million gallon tanks look like now. It's quite different from the Bearfield, I think, when we last presented to you. The pump station in the bottom right has 4 inline vertical turbine pumps with space for a 5th one in the future. The site also has a spot for a future third 6 million gallon tank if we need that for capacity. And then total project, just good news on this project. We completed the project for under our estimated $28 million budget.
Cool.
So we were on budget and on time with this project. One last little thing on the next slide that I wanted to share with you that's going on out at that same site. We are about to break ground on a crew building that will go on that site. It's about a 6,000 square foot building. Roughly half of it is a crew building where our water operations folks can do trainings. There'll be some office space, a conference room. And then the other half of the building is a shop where we can do maintenance and repairs. There is also an area where our water distribution folks can store materials, pipe, valves, bedding materials, so that when they're working out on the west side of town, they don't have to come all the way back to the courtyard. This project is, cost estimate is about $3.3 million. We are ready to break ground any day and hope to do that next week, actually. And a schedule for completion in July of '23. The next project I wanted to update you on is, as Sean briefly said, the Aquifer Storage and Recovery Wells project. Currently, we have 2 wells in construction, and we have 2 wells in design. The next slide shows where these are. The wells out on the west are in green, Westbrook, well 9, and Solaire, well 18. The 2 on the right in yellow are the ones that we have in design right now. They're going to be called Campus Oaks and Misty Wood. At wells 9 and 18, construction is moving right along. We have had some significant delays in the completion of this project, mostly due to electrical components and supply chain issues for those electrical components.
Yeah.
So right now, the sites are paved, the well pumps are going down the hole, and the column pipes going down the hole. What's different about these 2 sites from any of our other ASR wells is they have water filtration on site. We use green sand and activated carbon for the treatment of manganese and iron. There are no contaminants of concern, but they are taste and odor that we want to make sure we address before we put the water into our distribution system. The target date, breakers arriving on time, is still in January of 2023. This is just a quick picture to show you how tight these well sites are. On the left is, these are both at Westbrook, is just our scaffolding when we were building the actual building. And on the right, this is actually what the 6-bowl downhole pump looks like as they're starting to set it down the hole. At Mistywood and Campus Oaks, we've done an initial layout of how the facilities will fit on the site. We had to do that. We're going to do this this project in kind of phases. We do our initial layout, decide where we want the wells, put out a request for bids for drilling of the wells, and that's about ready to go out. Should be coming to your city council meeting here shortly. We drill the wells, then there's a couple of months that we take to test the water, pump the capacity of the wells, and finish our final design of the above-ground facilities. We anticipate that the wells will be drilled in the spring. We'll have that summer period of 23. We'll have that summer period to do our sampling and analysis, finish the final design, and put the construction contract out for spring of 2024. This is where the Mistywood well site is going to be. That's on Pleasant Grove. As you know, or may not know, we are planning on widening Pleasant Grove in that area to a 6-lane road. So this initial design is what we're kind of settled on right now. It has a separate entrance and exit from the facility so that workers can get safely in and out of the site. It also gave us the opportunity to push it back from the street. We've been working with landscapers and doing public outreach early so that we make sure that we have residents buy-in and can maintain their nice scenery from those few houses right there. The next slide shows the Campus Oaks, which is actually, I don't know if you guys know where Painted Desert is. This site is west of Roseville Parkway and south of Blue Oaks. There's just some development out there right now. We have been working with the developer who is at the moment getting ready to put his utilities in Painted Desert Drive. He's been very cooperative and helpful with us so that when they stub up the utilities, the water, the sewer, the electric onto this site, that they're in line where we already need them and we won't have to do any changes when we get ready to build. The last project I'd like to tell you about is what we're calling the 3 Projects project. They are improvements to our water distribution system. Back in 2020, when Caltrans and Placer County Transportation Authority were finalizing their plans to widen auxiliary lanes on Interstate 80, it was identified that there were 3 places where the city has water lines crossing the freeway that could be in conflict with the I-80 project. Those I've highlighted in yellow. I don't know if you can see them, but maybe on your screens you can see them in yellow. Those are places where we have older, smaller water distribution lines that actually were there before the freeway was put in. So they were put in to service just the local communities. What we did to make sure that we would have no issue if we actually lost those pipelines due to failure or to abandonment, or it was just too costly to replace them under the freeway. We modeled the system and looked for ways that we could connect loops and build redundancy so that we wouldn't lose fire flow and flow capacity if we did lose those. So we identified 3 places. On the top left, there's a circle on Douglas Boulevard. Our water main in Douglas does not actually connect across that bridge between Royer Park and Sostegg Park. So that's the first place we're going to target. The second one on the top right is a connection we're going to make between South Harding Boulevard and Wayne Drive. And then the bottom, there is a creek crossing that does not exist. It looks like at some point it was designed to carry our water system across, but it was never constructed. On the next slide, I'm going to tell you about the projects again. We are currently in design on all 3 of these sites. If you'll move to the next slide for me. This is what Douglas looks like. We're going to connect to both sides of the bridge, the existing water lines. They're already 8-inch on both sides of the bridge. And we will hang a new water main under the bridge on the south side of the bridge. So it's very little excavation to complete that loop. On the next slide, I show where we're going to do the connection between Wayne Drive and South Harding. When we did the downtown water mains replacement project in the Hillcrest area last year and year before, we planned ahead for this, and we had a blind flange and T put on there at the corner of Marion and Wayne Drive in anticipation of this connection. For this project, for this part of the 3 projects, we are going to need an easement, so we are working on that with the homeowner. And then the last one on the next slide is the creek crossing. We're going to construct a new connection between Coloma Way and Coral Drive. On one side of the creek, it is a 6-inch pipe, and on the other side, it's an 8-inch pipe. But we will take a new 8-inch line under the creek by Bore and Jack to connect these and loop our systems. On this particular section, we're working on the environmental and permitting. So all of these 3 projects are designed to build some resilience, redundancy in our system in case we lose those other lines. So I am done talking about water systems, and I'll turn it over to Tracy, who can tell you about the wastewater project she's working on.
All right. So, good evening. I'm here to talk about the Pleasant Grove wastewater treatment plant expansion and energy recovery projects. These projects have been on the books for a very long time, but I am excited to tell you that this might be the last time you have to hear about them. So, just for context, these projects, the 2 of them together, total $114 million, and they're funded out of the SPWA, the South Placer Wastewater Authority Capital Improvement Project budget. I'm going to start by talking about the expansion project. This was the first project that dreamed up and needed. In the far, far part of that picture, and I planned to have a pointer, but I can't, you can barely see the primary clarifiers. Those are being put upstream of the existing oxidation ditches. We also have a solids handling building, that's the building on the bottom left of the figure, that we're putting in to allow us to process the solids that'll come out of the primary clarifier. And then we have the digesters they're halfway painted, but now painted blue with the building in the middle. To the right, you'll see the energy recovery project, and that was south of the existing plant site, but still on property owned by the city. The goal of this project was to expand our capacity from 9.5 million gallons to 12 million gallons. So taking out additional solids is what we really, in the biological oxygen demand. So the primary clarifiers were needed and put in. That allowed us to then put in digesters to process those solids and then eventually dream up the energy recovery project, which I'll talk about next. This project is really to help also increase our treatment reliability and our operation efficiency. The project was supposed to be, it started in January of 2020. So we have experienced all the wonderful impacts of COVID, including the supply chain issues, which continue to be a very big problem on a project of this size. So we were supposed to be done in June of this last year. We're not projected to be done until July of 2023, but we are in operational startup, which I'll talk to you about. So we are seeing the end of construction. I can see the end of the light at the tunnel, and I'm very, very excited for that. So I will start off. So the first, go back one slide, please. So this is a close-up view of the primary clarifier site. So this is, we've started this up now. It includes a below-ground pump station, which you can see the picture on the right, and then 4 primary clarifier basins, and then an effluent basin that then goes out on a 54-inch pipe to the oxidation dishes that you can see on the right. The picture on the top right is a primary clarifier basin, very clean. It is now full of wastewater. It will never be that clean again. And then at the bottom, you can see that's a building, electrical building, because this facility requires quite a bit of electricity. And then the biofilters, which help to reduce the odors and eliminate the odors caused by this facility. Next slide. As part of this project, the startup is the most difficult part of this project, at least for our operators, maybe not for the contractor, but also the scariest part for us. And that was, how do we tie in these facilities to this already operating treatment plant that flows 9.5 million gallons a day? How do we do that? So in order to tie in the primary clarifiers, we had to bypass all the flow out of our existing 54-inch pipe so that we could make 2 connections into it. It required the contractor to install 1,000 feet of 18-inch temporary HDPE pipe. And through a lot of teamwork, we were able to figure out how to use the city's existing pumps to pump water through that pipe and into the oxidation ditches, and be comfortable enough to allow that to happen for a period that we really weren't sure how long. First, the contractor said they needed 2 days. They ended up needing more than a week. But our operators were very happy with this bypass, with the exception of a little bit more smell than we're used to, and felt very comfortable moving forward with this. Next slide. So the bypass allowed us to cut into our existing 54-inch pipe in 2 locations and install these very large elbows to allow flow to go into the primary clarifier and then come back out of the primary clarifier. So we abandoned the area in between these 2 elbows. You can see them, they had to use a crane to lower the elbows in. Those holes are 16 and 21 feet deep. It took them 2 days to cut that concrete pipe in 4 locations, and 3 days to connect up those pipes. Then we were able to put water in. We took the bypass off, and we put water into them and flowed them, and we have now operated the primary clarifier for over 28 days and have had really good results and are very excited. We have over 50% biological oxygen demand removal, which is why the treatment plant was designed for 12 MGD, but because of the high solids loading, we were never able to get to that full capacity. So these primary clarifiers are doing exactly what we want at a very high efficiency. So 50% of that BOD removal is a high percentage, which we're very happy with. And then 70 to 80% of the solids, the TSS, is being removed. And so overall, we're very excited about the function of these. And these are being operated by our operation personnel now. The next area that we're slowly starting up is the digester area. So this consists of the 2 digesters with the building in between. The building in between allows it controls the flow into and out of the digesters, and between the digesters also includes 2 boilers that help to heat the digesters. The digesters are like your stomach and need to be at 98 degrees to function properly. So that's the digester area. We're starting to start that up, and I'll explain a little bit about that. Also in the back of that, on the top left, you can see the solids handling building, and then between that building and the tank is the ferric chloride. Those will slowly be started up, but haven't been started up yet. It's a very stepwise startup process, which is why we won't be done until July. Most of the construction is complete. It's just the process startup takes a long time. So to start up the digesters, first we had to fill the tanks up with water to about 10 feet to the top. And then because they're anaerobic, we had to pump in nitrogen gas. It took us 2 weeks to pump in nitrogen gas to replace the oxygen to be less than 8%. It was not only the top of the tanks, but all the pipes that connect to it. We just can't have oxygen or it won't be anaerobic and we can have an explosion. So we spent a lot of time. We were very meticulous about it. You can see the truck there with the oxygen or the nitrogen tanks. It slowly pumped in there. We got to 2% oxygen, which was great. Made us feel really good. After we got done with that, then we pumped 248,000 gallons, or trucked, I should say, 248,000 gallons of sludge from Dry Creek digester area. We have a sludge holding tank. So basically we have extra sludge and then we process it and then we ship it out. So we took the extra sludge right after it came out of the digesters, filled these trucks, and for 4 days had 3 trucks going back and forth between the treatment plants to start up and insert into digester 1. That work is now done. And this week, we are very excited that we are starting to slowly pump sludge from the primary clarifier over to the digester. Monday, we did 1,000 gallons. Today, we did 2,000 gallons. We'll continue to slowly implement the live sludge into the digester because starting up a digester is a very finicky process and you don't want to upset the bugs, so we don't want to just slam a whole bunch of primary sludge in there. So experts are telling us that it will take probably about 41 days to start up our digesters if we don't have any upsets. So the operators have a schedule. The lab is doing testing every day. We're analyzing it and looking closely. We have a 7:30 meeting every morning to talk about what we're doing that day. But we're very excited and fingers crossed that we've really had a great startup process. We've not run into a lot of problems, and we're hoping that that's the case, because when you run into problems, then you run into supply chain issues to fix those problems, and we don't want to deal with that anymore. So we're hoping. So the next project I want to talk about is the energy recovery project. And this project is being constructed by the same contractor, but was awarded as 2 separate contracts, originally designed for 2 separate contracts. It was developed based on the desire to beneficially use the gas that we were going to have from the digesters. And this picture basically shows that this project is pretty much ready and just waiting for the digester gas. At the top of the picture, you can see the gas station, and it has the storage tanks and compressors. Our CNG, our solid waste CNG trucks, compressed natural gas trucks, have been using that station for over a year, using PG&E natural gas. We started with that being an early construction item because we know we wanted to do upgrades to our Courtyard gas station, which is the only other CNG station we have. And so getting this started up allowed us to actually just recently, this week, almost complete the upgrades to the Courtyard. So having 2 stations has been really nice. And so that was an early construction startup for this site. In the middle of the picture, you can see that we have a CNG, that's the gas conditioning system, and then to the left of that middle area is the electric building, which has microturbines under that canopy. And then to the bottom of the building is the high-strength waste receiving facility. And then the blue line that kind of runs, that's a pipe trench that runs utilities, water, gas, and hot water supply and hot water return between the energy recovery project and the expansion project. The really awesome thing about these projects is that they work hand in hand to produce renewable assets. So the digester produces a gas that the gas separation system at the Energy Recovery Project can turn into fuel for our solid waste trucks. High-strength waste can be brought into the Energy Recovery Project using fats, oils, and grease trucked in from other sources, and it's like candy to our digesters. So it produces more gas, which allows us to fuel more trucks. So we get to take away a waste and turn it into something beneficial from the fats, oils, and grease. The tail gas from the gas separation system allows us to power microturbines. The microturbines we're estimating they're going to produce about 10% of our power usage at the Pleasant Grove wastewater treatment plant, which is a lot of power. And then the other really cool thing about the microturbines is that they produce hot water. And that hot water will be sent back to the digester to help keep them at that 98 degrees. We've been running the digesters because we don't have this whole system working. We've been running them about half a month. And we're spending about $13,000 a month just to heat those digesters. So that hot water coming back is a great benefit. It's a small thing that we don't really talk about that much, but it is a big financial benefit. The Energy Recovery Project has $7 million in grant and loan forgiveness because it's a green project and the state likes that. So the return on investment for the entire Energy Recovery Project, which is a $24 million construction contract, costs a little bit more with engineering and everything else, but the rate of return is 12 years. So this project will last us much longer than 12 years, but we're getting benefits, and the engineer is talking to me about another potential thing that we can go for to get more money. But so it's been just a great asset, this additional project onto the project that we needed, which was the expansion project. The Energy Recovery Project just provides our ratepayers a great benefit, and it's very environmentally friendly, and the state loves it too. So that's all I have.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff at this time?
Yeah, I do. It's an incredible presentation. You all just did a marvelous job. I'm really impressed. On the digester gas that you're going to be used for solid waste trucks, have you done that before? Is this all new, or have you tried that with any of your existing vehicles?
No, we don't currently have that capability here at the city. It's new. Our
Tracy's the
CNG trucks only run right now on natural gas from PG&E. So this is a technology that is proven, though. Our engineers have done it before, so that's good. But yeah, it's
Modifications to the engine.
they don't have to be modified at all.
Really?
So the same trucks that are filling with natural gas right now will pull up and fuel with the same. We basically modify it to be the same.
That's good. That's interesting. Really, really, really clever.
It's a proprietary system that does that, though.
And this will be operational when on those trucks?
We should be fueling those trucks with that gas by April, May.
Impressive.
And the nice thing about that is we get credits for filling the trucks with digester gas. So we make money on that too.
Absolutely. Interesting.
Will you be able to sell the gas as well?
No, we will, the thing that made this project super, to pencil out really well is that we can use all the gas we can possibly create internally. Because when you start doing and selling it externally, it gets a little bit more confusing and expensive. And so because it was a benefit just for our, we basically had to put in the high-strength waste facility, which would increase our digester gas to be able to fuel the amount of trucks we expect to have.
What about extra storage?
We have some storage, but it's really dangerous and expensive to have too much because it's super high pressure.
So it will be in a gaseous form, not liquefied?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's stored in all gas. Yeah.
Interesting.
Any more questions on this side? And we got lots of questions over here. Why don't we start with you, Minor?
I thought the wastewater presentation was just, anyway, fascinating. Thank you, excellent job.
Yeah.
Really.
On the water side, I've always been curious about the city's aquifer storage and recovery program. And so my questions are maybe not appropriate. Maybe we need to have a separate session on them at some point. But, I'd like to know, how many acre feet have we managed to put in the ground? And how much does it cost? In other words, what's the dollar per acre foot kind of cost for that?
Sean's going to have to
gotta talk to
come
the
up and
operation
address
guy.
that.
Max man, huh?
Like I said, Sean, if you just want to punt to another time, that's okay with me.
Yeah, I probably will for more detail, but I can give you at least one example in terms of banking. So the most recent example is this year. So typically the opportunities have been when Folsom Reservoir has a situation where they're encroaching into the flood control curve. So reclamation will often, especially lately, they'll provide that water, same cost in terms of what we pay for our usual CVP rate, to be able to bank that water. So as an example, this past year, we were able to bank about 900 acre feet into the aquifer. In terms of the cost, comparison between sort of surface water versus groundwater, I will definitely need to get back to you on that calculation. And then I can give you kind of the span of time in terms of sort of the puts and takes as far as the system, and kind of give you an indication of that. In fact, I saw that the other day, and darn, I wish I had it with me, but I don't. But yeah, we've been obviously tracking that over time. And when I looked at the chart the other day, the total in terms of actual extraction versus, and this was over about a 10-year period, extraction versus actual recharge, we actually have a net recharge to the basin. So anyways, and again, this is, they're not going to be significant in terms of a system-wide perspective in terms of acre feet, but what I always like to tell folks is in the context of sort of a regional discussion about ASR technology, Roseville's kind of leading the way in terms of really demonstrating that this technology has the ability to really become scalable over time and really provide that benefit. So anyways, but all that being said, I will get back to you, Einar, on those details.
Okay, well,
Good questions.
I've always suspected that it's a little on the spendy side, because you've got to make improvements to the wells in order
Correct.
to be able to put them in, and
Correct.
then you got to buy the water, you got to treat the water, and then you got to extract it, and so it's expensive, and it's not a lot of water in comparison to how many 100,000 acre feet that we use.
Right.
And so anyway, but it's good for the basin. It's just, I'm concerned about its scale in comparison to everyone else who's using groundwater within the basin. 'Cause we have a right to use groundwater too, just like everybody else.
Sure.
We're the only ones that are sort of putting it in
Right.
at the same rate that we're taking it out.
Yeah.
But it's expensive.
Yeah, and I wouldn't argue with that notion at all. I mean, it's certainly true. I think where it gets really important in terms of having that ASR technology is when we really need it. So if we're in a situation where we have an emergency situation, or we get into a situation where we have a long-term drought and there's shortages, then that technology is really, really helpful to have in place. So it's never going to replace surface water in terms of that being our primary supply, and that's always going to be the go-to for Roseville. But for us, it's diversification of the portfolio and providing us that additional reliability. So.
I had one more question. It was really regarding the storage facilities out there. I have some friends of mine who get groundwater when we pump groundwater, and they're not real happy with the water quality. Is there going to be any opportunity for blending, doing anything with improving the water quality for the folks who live on the west side and get groundwater when groundwater is pumped?
Yeah, so what's interesting is with the West Side Tank and Pump Station, so that actually gives us the capacity to do blending of the water supply. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of the system prior to that facility, we really didn't have the facilities to be able to do that. Where with the West Side Tank and Pump Station, which is operational now, we certainly have that ability to, fill tanks, basically mix them where we can to some extent and kind of mitigate some of those impacts. And when folks largely grow up on surface water, used to the characteristics, and we understand that. I mean, I grew up on groundwater, so I'm definitely used to groundwater, but I also understand some customers haven't. So, but with that being said, I think the system as it's maturing, as we're building these additional infrastructure, especially in West Roseville, it'll give us that opportunity to do that, mitigate it.
Yeah, the soft surface water that we have can spoil you real fast.
Yes, it
And
can.
then when you get a little bit of calcium in your groundwater,
Yeah.
it's perfectly healthy. But,
Yes. Yes, we're very lucky in Roseville. Very, very, very good water. So I always say I think probably one of the best water sources this area has in comparison to the rest of the state of California.
I agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You had a question or a comment?
Yeah, a question. So for the the wastewater system and the energy recovery, that was very fascinating. I think you heard those comments. But I'm just curious, is that kind of a standard for utilities now, or is that pretty cutting edge?
It really was, again, penciled out because we own our own electric department, so kind of producing in-house power and offsetting our power supply kind of made it easier that we were dealing with them. And then with the solid waste fleet being our own, that made it really economical as well. So again, the whole one utility thing
Sure.
came into play and the economics of that project. So not a lot of people have kind of the full package that we have. East Bay Mud is one that does, but they're very large. But there's not a lot in California.
Cool, thanks. Glad we could do it at the city of Roseville.
Yes.
So I have a comment. Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive.
We are doing so many things that are really smart. Everything from trying to avoid day zero on water supply, the day you run out completely, to figuring out how to use things over and over again and produce electricity instead of just having more waste that has to be handled some other way. So I am so pleased and impressed, and thank you for all you do for the city of Roseville.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
For sure.
so at this point, what I need to do is ask if anyone from the public would like to come forward and address the commission on this item. Seeing no public comment, I want to say thank you to all of you, George, Tracy, and Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is a report from the Roseville Electric Utility, giving us our monthly update. This is from Interim Assistant Electric Utility Director Eric Campbell. He'll be summarizing the monthly status of our electric utility activities.
Good evening, Chair Webb, Commissioners. Eric Campbell, Roseville Electric. Nice to be here. We have just a couple things to share with you this evening. I think it was back in September we brought forth the electric energy surcharge before you all with the plan to have that effective on January 1st. That's now been pushed back to February 1st. You're probably aware that the City Council meeting on November 16th was canceled. And so it's pushed us back about a month in terms of implementation. But everything else is green, if you will. So we're excited to get that in front of council, get it approved, and get it in place February 1st. And just for your information, quite a few other utilities are doing the same thing now. Santa Clara is proposing an 8% increase next month. Modesto Irrigation got approved for 7.4% January 1st. So we're right in line with our peer group, if you will. Next thing is we kicked off phase 2 of the build-out of the building across the street, 116 Grant Street. And so that's floors 3 and 4. We met with the designer this month and started to do some space planning. We expect construction to kick off at some point in the third quarter of 23. And that should take about a year for construction, and we'll get the rest of our staff moved in at some time late 24. Next item is with CMUA, that's the California Municipal Utility Association. We hosted a team of lobbyists and their legislative regulatory team. They had a tour of our Roseville Energy Park. They took a look at the peakers that we have out there. That's the California Department of Water Resources peakers. We also showed them the bus charging depot that's under construction. And it's an important thing for us, for them to see what we're actually doing here at Roseville, because they're an advocate for us. They represent about 75 utilities across California, electric, gas, and water. And so the more they know about our business, the better they can represent us. Next item is we recently got our debt rating affirmed by S&P at AA. We did share during that session that we are proposing an 8% energy surcharge. That was very well received. And I believe that went a long way in getting our rating affirmed, with the outlook being stable as well. So that was a pretty big win for Roseville. We also kicked off our budget process within the electric department. We start a little bit sooner than the rest of the city. Just looking at how numbers are falling at this point, we do see a path forward where we can balance our budget with the 8%. We are concerned power supply costs do remain high, but they're within reach at the moment, and we don't see a need to come back for additional rate relief at this time. And actually, with that, I'll close it out and open it up for questions.
I do have a question. If the city's costs go down, is that going to be passed on to the consumer?
The city's cost?
Yes.
Possibly. We get chargebacks from the city through the indirects and things like that. We typically don't see those reductions until the following year, but that is a possibility that we would pass on those cost reductions.
One question. Of course, you rely on natural gas a lot. It's a huge part of your operating costs.
Yeah.
And do you anticipate any foreseeable increases that you maybe haven't taken into account?
Right now, the big factor is the war in Europe, the Russian-Ukraine situation. That's really the big item that's out there. I mean, in addition to the winter months.
Sure.
But the sooner that situation resolves itself, the better the market can get back to where it was before. Maybe not from a price perspective, but more predictability.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we had a hurricane in Florida. What happened in the transformer story?
Yeah, we're actually, we're in pretty good shape from a transformer perspective. All our orders from 2021 have been delivered. And so we're in a good position from a stock perspective. We're also looking at diversifying our sourcing portfolio, what vendors that we're getting transformers from. So we're not, in this situation in the future, but it really hasn't been any kind of impact on us here in Roseville.
Were they able to get their electric systems back in operation in Florida?
As far as we know, yeah.
That's huge. That's
Yeah.
hugely important.
No more? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Seeing no public questions, thank you for your update, Eric.
Thank you.
Our next item is the Roseville Electric Utility Capital Improvements Projects Overview. This presentation is going to be given to us by Interim Assistant Electric Utility Director Eric Campbell and Power Engineering Manager Chris Porter. They'll be giving us an overview of our electric utilities capital improvement projects.
Good evening again. Just to level set, we wanted to give you a kind of a cut of the budget. At the 60,000-foot level, our CIP budget for this fiscal year is $22.2 million. We've not come back for any additional budget adjustments at this point in time. We are tracking towards that number. It's a little bit higher than it typically is. We'll get into the detail later. You can see on that facilities other row, we have $5.4 million there. There's some big one-time investments there that are pretty atypical for us. Things outside of the electric space, like investments in the building across the street, UEC, and a traffic signal expansion. Next, I want to kind of give you an idea of, how our capital is funded. There's two big sources. One is customer rates. The other is developer fees. We have $13.9 million in rates this year to fund CIPs. That number jumps to $14.3 million next year. That's based on the last 3% increase that was approved. That will go into effect in January of '23. And then the remaining $7 million that comes from developer fees. Development pays its way here in Roseville, and so we're very careful about making sure they foot the bill for that infrastructure that goes in. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to talk about new customers.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Chris Porter, the Engineering Manager for Electric. First, I want to talk about our new customers, which is our developer-funded projects. Since development pays its own way in Roseville, even given the transformer situation and supply chain constraints, we still expect to spend about $5.6 million this year on new development. Of that, we're doing some we're extending mainline infrastructure throughout the Sierra Vista and Creekview specific plans. Additionally, we're adding infrastructure to serve probably about 1,000 homes this year. In comparison to the last couple of years, we've been in a very high pace. The last couple of years, more like 1,800. So we think we're kind of going to be going back to our normal flow, which is somewhere between 800 and 1,000 homes. As we talked to, we're still in a pretty good position on transformers. We continue to receive some. We have a lot on order. We continue to seek new sources. But key for us too is that a lot of the homes that are being built today already had the infrastructure in place, because normally we build out a subdivision completely. So if a subdivision has 12 transformers in it, we build the whole thing out, even if they're only building model homes and a couple production homes. So we had a lot of lots that were buildable in the city already, over 1,000 lots before this crisis started. So developers are able to continue to build on those lots without any impacts to their business. And then moving forward, given that we're still, having trouble getting transformers in, instead of building out the entire subdivision, we are currently new construction. We will only place a transformer where a home is being built. So one developer building models and production homes is only going to take up 2 transformers versus maybe 10 or 12. So that helps keep it fair for everybody, to keep everybody moving forward. So, so the first person in doesn't get 12 and then 10 of them sit idle. So we're trying to adjust our construction practices to make sure that we maximize our supply that we do have. Next slide. In addition to our new customer work, we have a lot of projects that we're doing on our distribution system. Key projects this year are the replacement of our industrial 12 kV switchgear number 1 at our industrial substation. The switchgear is at end of life, and it serves about 1,400 customers, so it's key to keep that type of equipment operational to limit our outage times in customer accounts. Also, we're going to be doing some 60 kV bus protection upgrades at multiple substations. This is just adding some additional protection equipment that allows us to more safely and reliably protect our system and clear faults faster to limit damage on our components. And we're in the process. We've already started parts of it, but we're reconductoring one of our 60 kV lines from our Berry Street substation to Douglas substation. Once that's complete, that'll drastically improve our ability to provide backup to what's mostly the east side of town. We have a loop on the east side of town that is fed from Fittyment and Berry Street, but there's very few lines that can tie those two together. So this is diversifying there and adding a larger capacity line to help our situation in contingency situations when we have a loss of a piece of equipment. So we're also doing a lot of work at our power plant. We're doing controls upgrades and replacement on our duct burners. The duct burners are responsible for about 25% of the output of the plant, so it's important that we replace the controls for that equipment as it starts to reach end of life, which is doing right now. We're also replacing controls on the zero liquid discharge system. Those are also end of life, and they also happen to be a kind of a standalone product right now. The replacement product will incorporate into the main control system at the power plant to help keep everything consistent out there. And basically what the ZLD is used for, zero liquid discharge system, is to basically provide clean water for our steam turbine generator. We're also replacing a lab sample panel that is part of the same system. It does online monitoring of that water to make sure that we're providing proper water chemistry to the steam turbine generator. And we're also going to be installing an enclosure around our steam turbine generator in this coming year. That'll help better protect it during inclement weather conditions. So, and that's all I have for the distribution system.
I'll pick it up again with facilities and other. This is where we have three very large projects. Of the 5.4 million that's in this bucket, 3.5 million is for the building across the street. It's for the build out of floors 3 and 4. I'll give you an update on that earlier. The next big item here is a refresh of the exhibit at the UEC. That's the Utility Exploration Center. Right now, we're preparing to bring vendors in the early part of December to award that contract. And then third, there's a traffic signals shop expansion here, about $700,000, and that's really to support growth. The growth in the area has just really become too much for that group to support, so they've had to add staff, and now they're looking for some additional space to house that staff. And so those are the three big items in the facilities and other bucket. So we're glad to answer any questions in any of the projects that we shared this evening.
I do have a question, and this might not be for you, but is there a cap on the amount of new construction for the city?
Like, do we limit it in any fashion? No. Is the master planned, and so all the lots have already been like identified. There's nothing that we do to arbitrarily restrict them from moving forward.
But there might be 10,000 that are left in the
Yeah.
current master plans.
Yeah, I would say for residential.
Is it 10,000?
Yeah, for residential, between low density and medium density, there's probably about 10,000 units left. We think we're in somewhere in the range with the current size of the city to have built out residential in the next 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
Any other questions on this side? Over here? All right. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address the commission on this item? Not seeing any questions from the public. Thank you so much for your presentation. Our next item is the Roseville Electric Utility Municipal Code Edits. This presentation is also by our interim Assistant Electric Utility Director, Eric Campbell, and also our interim Electric Utility Financial Advisor, Joanna Cucci, with an overview about our municipal code edits. This item is for recommendation.
Thank you. I'm going to make it easy and hand it off to Joanna.
Good evening, everyone. This item is basically a simple cleanup of our municipal code. We periodically review the municipal code for any errors, omissions, or changes that need to be made to make sure that it's up to date for our current policies. So we have a few recommendations moving forward for changes to municipal code. The first is a language cleanup of the code due to a structural realignment of the building division from the finance department to the electric department. So we just had to change some language there. There is an update to the electric vehicle rate for city-owned chargers, an update to the billing and metering bill error correction policy, addition of detailed dusk to dawn and flat rates, and then some other minor changes that I'll walk through at the end of the presentation. So starting with the first item, the billing division was moved from the finance department to the electric department probably about a year ago. The municipal code references needing approval of the finance director. And so with this change, we're changing all that language to read the electric utility director. So this is just a cleanup of the current process and reporting structure of the utility. On the electric vehicle rate, the current electric vehicle rate for city-owned chargers is 30 cents per kWh. This, when it was originally calculated, was designed to recover the fixed energy and demand costs for the chargers, as well as the installation and maintenance. Since that time, we've started to receive funds from LCFS auctions, or the Low Carbon Fuel Standard auctions, and those proceeds are now funding the installation and maintenance of these chargers, and so we're reducing the rate to 15 cents to just recover the fixed energy and demand costs. So that basically the cost that would be recovered through rates versus the LCFS auctions. Moving on to the bill correction. Currently, our bill correction, this is for billing errors or metering errors that we find out later and we go back and correct. Currently, the code allows for 12 months of back billing, so basically going back 12 months if the error is in favor of the customer, and then 6 months if the error is in favor of the utility. We've surveyed other utilities in California, and almost all of them have an equal number, where the customer and the utility have an equal number of months that it can back bill. The most common number of months was 12 months, so we are recommending that we change our policy or our municipal code to have 12 months in favor of the customer for errors and 12 months in favor of the utility for errors. On dusk to dawn and flat rates. Now, these are rates that we've charged our customers for years, as long as I've been here. They're basically unmetered lighting throughout the city. These rates are based off bulb size and the calculation of how much energy they use. They're just lighting. They only happen at night. However, they're not spelled out in the municipal code currently. So moving forward, we thought it would be more correct to include the actual list of rates in the municipal code. So this is just adding those rates. We're not proposing any changes to the cost, any changes to anything except taking what we're already charging and putting it in the municipal code. And then the other changes being made, these are kind of some smaller changes. We're updating the payment processing. This is just to reflect how payments are processed and then the types of payments that are accepted by the billing division. We're removing the limitation of service provision. This is a device that could be added to a home to limit the amount of electricity that goes through. It's kind of like a bill collection technique. We don't use it. We haven't used it for over a decade, so we're removing that from the code. And then we're removing the combined bill provision. Our billing system currently cannot do this, and so we're removing that as an option from the municipal code as well. So these changes will align our current practices within the billing division with the municipal code. And so our recommendation, our request is for the PUC to recommend adoption of the proposed municipal code update to reflect the rates, policies, and organizational realignment in the electric department to City Council.
Questions?
And I don't know if this applies to us or not, but there's, every now and then, there's a media story pops up about the solar buyback thing and how solar users are, being penalized and then vice versa, the utilities are, it's not fair to either. Is that factored all into this for is there any solar component?
None of the changes we're proposing relate to any of our solar rates. We do have a NEM 2.0 or a Roseville Solar 2.0 that we adopted in 2018 or went effective 2018 that helped balance out the impact of the utility versus the impact of the customer. So we feel pretty good about the balance of our collections on solar customers being fair to the solar customer as well as the remainder of our customers.
Thank you.
Okay, questions over here? Yeah, go ahead.
So is the municipal code, it doesn't have all the rate, isn't the rate policy something separate?
So the municipal code has all of our rates in it. That's where
Or it
our
has to
rates
be-
live.
Is it revised as rates are
Yes.
changed?
So,
Okay.
yeah, every time that we change any rates, we come with a municipal code change.
Okay, and then the combined bill provision, so does that mean we won't get the same bills we've always got, where we've got all the
Oh.
combined city fees on it, or?
Sorry, that was a little confusing the way I worded that. So this is if a customer has multiple sites. We can't combine that onto one bill anymore. Like in our old system, we could do that. In the newer system, we can't take all of a customer, if they have 10 sites, we can't combine that onto one bill. So we're removing that.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking that.
Go ahead.
How does 15 cents compare with others? I'm just curious. The 15 cents for the charging your electric vehicle?
Compared to other municipals?
Utilities.
Honestly, I haven't compared that to other utilities. It's a cost-based calculation, so I took our adopted rates and then applied it to the energy use of these and calculated it out. So all of our rates need to be cost-based, so the calculation is just exactly what it costs us to supply the energy.
I was just curious if you use one of those, never mind.
Own EV chargers. We just have a few. So it depends on if utilities are owning the chargers or if they're private chargers as well.
I was going
Where
to,
are the,
So the
where,
Tesla chargers that we see around those are not city?
Those are not
And they're
city.
not 15 cents?
No,
No.
it's whatever they
where-
charge.
So there are a couple of chargers in the parking garage here.
Yeah, we have one in the Oak Street parking garage and then two over in the other larger parking garage. There's one at the mall. Mahaney Park has one.
At the utility.
And then the Orlando Transit Center also has one. And then at 2090 Hilltop at the utility.
Okay.
okay. That's why I was going to ask, is it, so then setting that, whatever, 15 or 16 cents, is it premature if we're going to get a 8% rate increase? Should we wait to, or I don't know, just seems like.
So this won't go into effect until after the 8%
Oh, so
goes
that's
to
been
city council, so it's actually included in
Factored in there, okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this side?
So just to be clear, if I buy a plug-in hybrid next year and I come home and plug it in my garage, this has nothing to do with that. You have no way of knowing that I'm plugging my car in at night in my garage.
No.
It'll just show up on my utility bill for the additional usage, okay.
Yeah, this
That's what I
is
thought, but.
just for the
yeah.
public city-owned chargers, so there's about 8 of them. In your home, you will pay the residential rate for that energy.
What is the residential rate?
We have 2 tiers, so there's tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is 9, and then tier 2 is 13 or 14. I actually can't remember off the top of my head. So, and then the base fee. So basically, it depends on how much energy you use, what you end up paying.
So is there any, someone from the public who'd like to come forward and address this, the commission on this item? Seeing no public comment, I will close public comment. I'd like to ask for a motion to recommend this item be presented to city council. Do I have a motion to recommend?
I'll recommend it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The recommendation is passed and has been approved to be presented to council. Thank you, Eric and Joanna.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is board member, commissioner, or staff reports. Are there any reports from staff? Are there any reports or questions or comments from the commission? Does anyone have any items that they would like to suggest for future meetings? May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Can I have a second? Yes. Second. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
And we won't see everyone for another.